So you're left with a complex grudge. Perhaps it's been there for many years, perhaps it's recent, but you just don't know what to do with it. In this video, I'm going to discuss how to process complex grudges and how to get your power back. So stay tuned. Hello everyone, Dominica here with you, and in this video we're going to be discussing how to process complex grudges. Before I begin, I'd like to remind you that this is a second video about this topic. If you're curious to see my first video, definitely take a look at my channel and you will find the first part of this video that I made earlier this week. So before I begin, if you're new to this channel, definitely subscribe and like this video if you happen to resonate with the upcoming content of this video. So without further ado, you're holding on to a grudge, an emotional residue that typically happens to us when we go through a trauma or conflicts with other people or something adverse happens to us. And it typically happens as well when we haven't yet processed the emotions and the grudge is still there. So for a lot of people, it tends to live in the upper part of our stomach. So in my earlier video, I made 3 points around how to navigate through your grudge, how to get your confidence back, and how to move on from the feeling of grudge. As grudges generally hold us back from moving on, they take our confidence away from us. They also hold us in the past, perhaps we dwell on whatever happened to us, and also we forget to turn to our true potential. And as I said, we're unable to move on with our lives and reaching our fullest potential, whatever it is for you. On that note, I'm going to add 3 more points around how to process your grudge, especially if it is a quite complex one, in a sense that it's been there for many years and you don't know what to do with it, and you're very angry at the person that upset you or a group of people that upset you. So I'm going to give you 3 powerful tips that will help you to process this grudge. So tool number 1, realize that no one truly decides to be a villain or a bad person. No one wants to be a narcissist or have a personality disorder. No one just wakes up and says, aha, I'm going to be a narcissist today. It doesn't generally work like that, especially with personality disorders or any other mental conditions. It generally stems from someone's upbringing. So when we are kids, we generally rely for a lot of love and affection from our parents. So if children don't get that from their parents, if they come from neglectful families, emotionally abusive, or even physically abusive families, of course they're going to develop some sort of difficulties as an adult. So narcissism would be one of them. If you encountered a narcissist in your life, or you encountered someone that just wasn't fair with you, well, this is their perception of the world based on their upbringing, based on their background. So all of their difficulties come from their childhood or whatever else happened to them in the past that made them perceive life that way and made them treat people the way they treated you. So this is their issues, and your life perception might be different to them. So while they have their own perception of how they should be living, you also have your own perception of how you should be living. And realizing that, becoming aware of that, can be very powerful for you moving on from your grudge and letting go of that grudge. And that smoothly leads us to my second point. Point number 2, working on your empathy. So when you show empathy towards the person, towards the person that mistreated you. And I know it might sound very counterproductive. Why should I on earth feel empathy towards a person that hurt me? Well, based on the point number one that I made, that person went through trauma in their life, or someone else mistreated them in a major way that made them the way they are now. And chances are you don't even know, or perhaps you even do know, that they have went through these difficulties. So having that empathy for that person can be very powerful in order for you to move on from the grudge that you hold because of how they treated you. And very important not to mistake an empathy with sympathy, because sympathy is, I'll give you an analogy. When you see somebody drowning, you drown with them. That's not what I'm talking about, and this is not healthy for you or for the other person. Empathy is more so when you see somebody drowning, but if they're refusing your help, you take a step back, because there's nothing you can do. Some work they have to do themselves, and you realize the boundaries there, and you then know where you stand with that person. And also having the empathy towards yourself as well. So this is where the whole thing of empathy comes in as well. When you have the empathy for the other person, but also for yourself, so that you can protect from people like that hurt you. If you think that this person is upsetting you constantly, no matter what you do, at least you know now that they have these difficulties. You showed empathy towards them, but now it's time to show empathy towards yourself, and step back and just create that safe space for yourself, so that you can take a healthy distance from an individual like that. So that will also help you move on from a very complex grudge that you've now developed, or from any grudge for what it's worth. So tip number 3, and this is my final tip for this video. So having healthy boundaries established between yourself and how you interact with others. So what topics you are okay to talk about, what things you are not okay with, and you are okay to say this to an individual, and if they break those boundaries, you might give them another chance, because we're all humans, we make an error, and that's okay. But if that individual keeps making the mistake, well, at least you can walk away, or whatever you feel comfortable doing in your own mind. That's where the boundary comes in. So the same applies with someone that has mistreated you, and perhaps it has been someone close to you. Perhaps it's a person that you unfortunately have to see every day. Very common, people experience that at work or at families, where they unfortunately have to deal with the abuser on a regular basis. So, when you realize what your boundaries are, you can then establish those boundaries with the individual. So say, for example, it's your mother, and if your mother keeps criticizing you, so you could say something like that: I love you, you're my mom, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but if you continue criticizing me, I will have to end this phone call. So let's keep our conversations light. And that's it. That's an example of what you could say when you have a preconceived boundary in your head. You can translate that to other people so that they know how to treat you. If you don't do that, there's a higher likelihood of other people creating those boundaries for you, and that's something that you don't want, because chances are, if people treat you how they think you should be treated, it will be coming from their perception of the world, as we talked earlier, and it might be very different to how you see the world and how you see the interaction between yourself and other people. So you're better off sitting down with yourself, think about what boundaries it is that you want to establish with people. And if you happen to still see the person that you hold the grudge against on daily basis, and that does happen quite often. So you may decide what is it in the conversation that you want and you don't want with that particular individual. One of my favorite exercises that I give to people is journaling. So if you journal, for example, you can incorporate this into your journal time when you write out the boundaries between yourself and the other person, and at least you can rationalize them with yourself before rationalizing them with other people, including one that you hold grudge against. Anyway guys, I hope this video has been helpful, and as I said, if you haven't seen my first video around this topic, definitely check it out. And for now, this is it. I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the content of this video, and I will speak to you soon.